Starladder iLeague Star Series Season 6, or Star Series and iLeague CSGO Season 6, or whatever they're calling it now, is currently going on. As I'm recording this, Vega and Hellraisers are playing in the last game of the Swiss. But I think this is a pretty interesting tournament in that, okay, the top teams aren't there, but a lot of these teams that people like to talk about as possibly being the next big thing are in attendance, and in some cases, say NRG, they sort of performed up to people's hopes, people's expectations maybe, but maybe teams like Complexity who impressed the major, not so much, and people were saying they were the next big thing sort of have, or might have egg on their face a little bit at this tournament, or in the last couple of days, feeling a little embarrassed maybe. And I think this tournament's interesting in the way that this sort of dynamic plays out in what I like to call how hipster hype trains play out. Because I think there's a natural tendency to... Okay, if you look into teams, you obviously get to... and you look into them specifically, you're going to have more specific or esoteric opinions on them in relation to the general public, and that might mean that you think they're much worse than most people think they are, or much better, or a little bit better, a little bit worse, or right. That the chances that your expectations or the public's expectations are aligned with your much more informed opinion seem low, right? What's the chances that the general public just knows the exact level of a team? It's not, it could happen, but maybe it's not the highest percentage shot. And at least the scenarios say where you think Liquid is significantly better than people think, and they're going to win the major over Astralis, or they have a chance to win the major over Astralis. Or I think the more, in my opinion, annoying example is where you go way further down the rung of, further down the ladder, down the rungs, and you pick a team, say Vega Squadron or Sprout or Fragsters, and you want to say, this is the next big thing, watch out for this team. Now, what that does, you're sort of attaching your reputation to theirs. If they ended up performing, you could say, hey, look at this position for 3 months ago. Aren't I intelligent? Don't I have a more nuanced sense of teams than you guys do? This sort of bodes well for my analytical abilities or my predictive powers or whatever you want to say. But what I don't necessarily like about that, other than the fact these people might be a little bit annoying, a little bit cheerleaders, right? They might just be like, watch out for these guys are the best, these guys are the best, on Twitter, when, their evidence hasn't really proven that yet. What I find disagreeable about sort of these hipster hype trains is that I think that there's a problem in terms of looking at trends versus looking at a team's overall record. And sort of what I mean by that is I think there's this natural predilection where people want, this is sort of tied into the idea of a hype train where they want to, bandwagon. Oh, this team's rising up. They keep getting better and better. Oh, I'm a fan of this team. I can't wait till, they beat X team or Y team, or they win this tournament. That's going to be so much fun. I hope they do it. I hope they keep improving. I want to watch all their games, right? I want to be a part of this sort of upward trajectory and watch more people come in and sort of, maybe brag a little bit and be like, I was here way before you. You're sort of late coming on this. But what the problem with that sort of trend analysis, you watch a team, say, not attend LANs to maybe start attending a couple LANs here and there, to attending bigger LANs, to actually maybe getting some wins at these LANs, to actually making the playoff in one of these big LANs. There's this nice trend. You go from a team like NRG, who wasn't attending LANs for a while, to actually starts attending LANs and then, wins a bit. I think they made the playoffs here at Starladder. and you think, okay, they're going to keep going up. I'm going to join the train. I'm going to be like, energy the next big thing. This new player, Cirque's so sick, or Stanislaus is a great in-game leader. Look what he's done before. Look what he's doing now with these guys. I mean, you can even play Shazam or something like this. But the thing about this is, my feeling on these teams is, well, okay, Complexity made top 8 at the major, but what else have they done? Oh, nothing? How long has this team been together? Oh, a while? So in X many months, they've only won so many games on LAN. Okay, great. If 6 of those were at the major, but, maybe you can sort of look into it, make some additional evaluations. What about the format? What about the games themselves, eye tests, or what about their opponents? What about all the more specific factors? But I think the problem with these is sort of a separation in terms of analysis or in terms of evaluation when you look at results about overall and trend. So with trend, I think it's about projecting outwards, right? If this team wasn't doing well before, is doing well now, or is improving, perhaps they'll keep improving. Now, there's no guarantee, of course, that trends will continue. Maybe just projecting a pattern. Maybe their good result was a overperformance, which, maybe someone more cynical like myself would say, and they're going to come back down to their average. But someone maybe who sees this trend is like, well, it's a trend. It could continue. This team is on their way up, and watch out for them at the next tournament. And I think this is the fundamental disagreement with sort of the cynics versus the optimists, is some people want to see Complexity's top 8 at a major and say this is their new level, this is what they're capable of, and watch out for them at future tournaments. Where I think someone like me is, well, look at their overall history. This seems like a crazy outlier. I don't expect this team to repeat this performance, right? Given all of their prior history. It's a look at my position. Call me cynical or wrong-minded or a hater, whatever you want. Is a position which looks at their overall history. And then the optimist is looking at the trend. Well, they never achieved this before. What can they achieve tomorrow, right? And you can sort of dive into it now, looking at using results to evaluate a team. All, of course, isn't the most accurate, or looking at results to judge a team is the most perhaps objective way of judging a team, right? By what they accomplish versus relative to their peers. It's maybe not the most analytical or specific. You can look at, as I was saying before, formats and opponents and in-game eye test stuff. But if you're going to do results-based analysis or use results to justify your opinions on teams, if you don't trust your subjective interpretation of a team's performance versus someone else, it gets confusing. It gets confusing with teams like, say, Vega, who seem to be able to beat teams better than them, like North. And it's also confusing that teams like North seem to do worse or are less successful in terms of consistency versus lower tier teams like Vega, but they actually seem to perform better versus higher tier teams like Astralis, right? It's sort of, there's confusing patterns there with the results-based analysis, but I think the conflict comes down to this central disagreement versus overall, which is overall versus trend. And as I've sort of alluded to in this video, I'm against trend analysis because it seems like just recency bias. Like, well, this is their level yesterday, it'll be their level tomorrow. But at the same time, there is something to looking at if you have won 7 of the last games on Inferno, but they lost the last three. Well, maybe that's not the best indication of their next three games on Inferno. You think the more recent a result is, the higher propensity. There's a higher propensity for it to align with future results because it's closer to the now, the current, right? Versus something a year ago or a year and a half ago, right? That's less and less relevant as you get up to closer and closer to present day. It's more and more relevant to their results tomorrow and a week from now and a month from now, right? But it does seem to me as just recency bias or people who live without or analyze based off of feeling in the now, what they're looking at the now without a proper framing of this team's overall results. So it's sort of interesting to see how this tournament plays out. In some cases, you'll see, I think, with complexity that maybe there's something to the more overall analysis, the more full track record analysis rather than the most recent one. But I'm not exactly sure that it's completely without merit to look at the most recent. As I was saying, it's not completely without merit, and it's sort of fun, I think, at this tournament to see what happens. I hope I'm right more often than not, but we'll see.